The economy here in China, growing at 6 to 7%, sounds relatively slow compared to the very heady years of consistent double-digit GDP growth. But the economy here in China is still growing, and there's one sector of the economy here that's not just growing, it's absolutely booming. When most people think about shopping in China, this is probably what comes to mind. Crowded, chaotic, and maybe a little bit behind the times. More often than not, shopping here in China looks like this. Here's a country that 20 years ago didn't really have any phones at all, even landlines. And just a decade ago, there were some pretty good reasons why e-commerce could never take off. The postal service was slow and hardly anyone had credit cards. And those people who did were pretty reluctant to use them online. And few online stores would even accept them. Those days now seem like ancient history. People are buying everything from toothpaste to TVs online. Chinese shoppers spend more than $600 billion online every year. And by the year 2020, some forecasters expect e-commerce to account for more than 40% of all consumer spending. China's internet boom began in the 90s with internet cafes, but it's the rise of mobile phones here, and there's some pretty super cheap, fully featured smartphones available now that have really made the difference. Very few people shopping online now use a computer. In China, it's all about mobile and about growing consumer demand for more choice. Laura Zhong is Chief Brand Officer at JDcom, one of China's biggest e-commerce companies.
The offline retailer environment or the offline retailer is relatively underdeveloped. Okay, compared with those developed markets like US or West Europe. The overall product selection and the price as well as the retailer service is not as good as those Western market. Particularly in the tier 3, tier 4, tier 5 cities, okay? This actually gives some opportunity for the online e-commerce to provide more selection of the products as well as the better quality service to the customer and allow the e-commerce grow very, very dramatically.
China's economic growth over the past 20 odd years has created the world's largest middle class. These are people with money to spend who are increasingly discerning about how they spend it.
And those group of people, consumers, they are looking for quality product, quality service. This also gave the e-commerce, particularly like the JDcom, because we're committed to give consumer the superior shopping experience, a great opportunity to grow.
People who know a little about China know that it's difficult to get here, Facebook and YouTube, but there's no shortage of social networks here in China. In fact, many of them are significantly more advanced and feature-rich than you can get in the West. Another thing you can do plenty of here in China is shop via e-commerce and social networks. And boy, can you shop. Middle-class Chinese consumers are buying huge quantities of luxury goods, as well as more everyday items. 1/3 of mobile shoppers are buying online at least once a week. What's different about online shopping here in China is that people shop not with individual retailers but within a one-stop shopping platform. Here they can find products from pretty much any category, from iPhones to ice cream, and they can do it all from one account. Brands coming into China still need to build consumer awareness. They must communicate a unique brand promise that's meaningful to shoppers, and they must deliver on those promises. But here, the phone is both the store and the distribution tool. The rise of e-commerce isn't all about global brands descending on China though. There's plenty of traffic going in the other direction. E-commerce is also helping Chinese brands spread their wings. Smaller brands who have only been able to sell in a local province can now sell nationally right across China, and larger brands have the capacity to become bigger international players as well, like Anker Electronics and Tap for Fun Gaming are also well on their way to becoming big international brands as well. Xiaomi, for instance, which makes world-class mobile smartphones and tablets, is only 7 years old. It's now the fourth largest mobile phone manufacturer in the world, and it only sells via e-commerce. All this activity has been driven by just a couple of big local e-commerce players. They've borrowed the best bits from the likes of Amazon, eBay and Ocado. Then they've made their platforms uniquely Chinese. They've done things bigger, and in many ways, they've done them better. The two giants battling it out over China's multi-billion-dollar e-commerce market are Alibaba and JD.com. Alibaba has been a household name in China for years, but it was in 2014 that it shot to global fame and into the record books with its listing on the New York Stock Exchange. Since its initial public offering here at the New York Stock Exchange on September the 19th, 2014, one brand has gone from complete obscurity to an international overnight success story. It's created a massive online marketplace. On that historic day, the Chinese brand Alibaba raised a massive $25 billion through this exchange, going from obscurity to the largest IPO in history. The way Alibaba works is like a marketplace where buyers and sellers can connect. The company doesn't hold any stock, which means a leaner operating model. Crucially, what Alibaba did to unleash the power of e-commerce in China was to come up with a payment system that was easy to use and would be trusted by both buyers and sellers, and that would be more efficient and more scalable than cash on delivery. The answer was to create Alipay, a secure digital payment system that cured China's huge online payment headache in a flash. JD.com is very different. It stocks and sells its own inventory, stored in its huge network of warehouses all over the country. It also owns its delivery network, with its own trucks and delivery vehicles. It employs around 45,000 drivers. This gives the company control over the entire shopping experience, from the moment a shopper clicks online to the time they receive their package. Shoppers can pay on delivery or pay digitally through JD's own payment service. Amazon is also here, though it has only a tiny share of the market. It's focused on making foreign products more affordable to Chinese consumers and launched a Chinese version of its Prime delivery service in late 2016. But it's Alibaba that leads the field with about 2/3 of the market share. JD.com has under a quarter, but it's growing fast. JD is giving Alibaba a run for its money, thanks in part to a strategic partnership with Tencent's WeChat. WeChat is the mobile chatting app that just about everyone in China uses. JD's customers can now browse, choose and pay for what they want without ever leaving a WeChat conversation.
And now Starbucks has teamed up with WeChat to enable payments to be made via the WeChat platform across all of Starbucks' 2,500 stores rolling out across China. Imagine that. I'll be able to get my hot chocolate without the queues. WeChat's like a combination of WhatsApp and Facebook and a lot more besides. It's a portal here in China through which you can do almost anything. You can order a cup of coffee, you can transfer money to friends, you can pay for a taxi ride. You can also play games and have entertainment through the portal, and you can even put a deposit down for your next car. Mine's, I think, is going to be this Maserati here.
In the Brand's Top 100 Most Valuable Global Brands for 2016, both Alibaba and JD.com are even bigger than some of the biggest and oldest names in retail across the globe. Brands like Macy's, 7-Eleven and Carrefour. In 2016, JD.com was the second fastest growing brand from any business category in the world, beaten only by Amazon.
Online shopping here in China has become a national pastime, and not just because it gives access to the brands that maybe in second or third tier cities people can't actually get in their local stores, but also because it's cheap. Now, everyone here just loves a bargain.
And the biggest bargain shopping day of them all is Singles' Day. Each year on November the 11th, China goes on a shopping frenzy that keeps setting new records for online sales in a single 24-hour period. It's called Singles' Day, and it started out in the 90s as a kind of anti-Valentine's Day for single people. A bunch of Nanjing University students picked a date with lots of ones in it, 11/11, and made it an excuse to buy presents for themselves. In 2009, Alibaba boss Jack Ma, a man with a keen eye for a marketing opportunity, took this idea and turbocharged it, turning Singles' Day, almost overnight, into an incredible national phenomenon. He ropes in local and global celebrities like Daniel Craig and Katy Perry for a marketing extravaganza that promotes the deep discounts on offer. In this one day in 2016, shoppers here spent $17.8 billion. That's about 4 times what Americans spend on Black Friday. The rise of Singles' Day has happened at a pace that's hard to fathom outside of China, at least. In fact, Chinese businesses can teach those in the West a thing or two about moving fast.
E-commerce here in China is not just about buying things cheap, it's also about speed. China's been setting the pace globally in terms of speed of delivery. It's not uncommon in many large cities here in China for delivery to take place within the day, and indeed some cities within an hour or two. And some tests and trials are being done with a promise of delivery under 30 minutes.
Alibaba and JD.com have both vast fulfillment centres in Shanghai, which are absolutely state-of-the-art and pretty much run entirely by robots. And JD.com is pioneering new ways of getting their packages out.
Delivery by drones are a long way off in markets that we would consider to be more developed. But here in China, JD.com are already using drones to deliver to consumers. They've used them very successfully in the recent 11/11 sales campaign.
JD's drones can deliver packages weighing up to 25 kilos each and making a 60-kilometre round trip before they need recharging. This is great not just for getting parcels out fast, but also for reaching consumers in more isolated parts of the country where access by road is difficult.
It was fantastic, but of course, I won't say, today it's everywhere. We are still in the early stage. We need to continuously drive in that area. And the good thing is the progress is very encouraging.
Well, you might be thinking, well, if the economy in China in terms of economic growth is slowing down and most consumers here in some of the centres of Chinese cities are already doing quite a lot of their shopping via e-commerce, where is the growth going to come from? Well, the new growth here in China isn't going to come from just doing the same old thing.
For international brands looking to grow in China, there's strong and growing consumer demand for well-positioned global brands. E-commerce has given shoppers exposure to a whole new range of products and brands. And both JD and Alibaba now offer ways that foreign brands can sell direct to increasingly wealthy Chinese shoppers. Retailers like Costco, Macy's and House of Fraser sell to Chinese consumers like this. And that kind of cross-border e-commerce is growing at 50% a year. For the two giants of Chinese e-commerce, the platforms themselves, there's a whole bunch of growth opportunities. They're both using the IT they've developed for e-commerce to provide business services to other companies. They're using their data, their computing power, and their logistics infrastructure as well to diversify their revenue streams. They're going deeper into categories that are still traditionally bought offline, like clothes and shoes. And they're getting into grocery. Grocery is an immensely challenging category because freshness is absolutely vital. And people don't spend anything like as much per shop as they do on electronics. But it's a massively important category because people shop for groceries all the time. If they get into the habit of doing that with one online retailer, the loyalty that results is of huge strategic significance for the e-commerce companies. It's early days so far, but online FMCG is growing by nearly 50% a year. In JD's case, they've teamed up with Walmart to help tackle the grocery market.
I would say we're not making money on the grocery today, but we believe, okay, with the scale, as we build the scale, hit the critical mass, and also we optimize our fulfillment cost, like we put use our big data to put the right product combination in one warehouse. So when consumer place the order, we don't need to send the product from different area to them. So we optimize all those operations. I think in future we can make this as a from scale standpoint, it's a huge category, but also make like a decent money from there. It is a very, very critical category, strategically critical category to us.
Alibaba is now entering the world of physical retail, going O2O as it's known, online to offline. They've bought a stake in the massive Suning chain of stores across China, which sells consumer electronics and is one of China's largest retail chains. JD.com is also looking at O2O opportunities.
I think from long-term standpoint, JD with ourselves, we also need to think about how can we meet the customers' needs in the different channels. So offline is definitely one area we need to learn, we need to explore.
Beyond China, there's the rest of the world to look at. Alibaba's founder, Jack Ma, says he wants at least half of their revenue to come from outside of China. In 2016, the company took a $1 billion step into Southeast Asia, investing in the Singapore-based Lazada e-commerce group. That gives it coverage in Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Singapore, Thailand and Vietnam. India's another key growth market for Alibaba, and it's taken a stake in the Indian company Snapdeal. JD.com is also focusing on fast-growing markets, places where, like China, there's been a jump straight into mobile shopping rather than desktop-based e-commerce. So far, it's set up in Russia and Indonesia. There's also huge potential remaining in the kind of e-commerce that's already generating massive sales figures for Alibaba and JD.com. So far, the focus has been on the most wealthy consumers in China, those living in major cities like Shanghai and Beijing, the so-called Tier 1 cities, as well as the Tier 2s and 3s. But outside these top-tier cities and into Tier 4s, 5s and beyond, consumption is thriving. Incomes are lower there by as much as 50%, but consumers know local and international brands, and they understand what these brands represent. They're buying property, cars and home appliances. Arguably, it's consumers in these smaller cities who will power China's next big spending wave over the coming 5 years or so. There's an old Chinese proverb that might well have been penned with the age of e-commerce in mind. A clever rabbit will have 3 burrows.
And with 160 million Chinese internet users who have still not yet made their first e-commerce purchase, and with China's internet penetration still at only 15%, that's a massive 500 million new consumers who are available to become e-commerce purchasers. And that is a massive Chinese takeaway. Well, thank you very much indeed for watching. To find out more about the Brandz Top 100 Most Valuable Chinese Brands for 2017, just go to www.brandz.com. And to find out how WPP can help you build strong and valuable brands here in China, just contact me, David Roth.